Chapter 241. It's wonderful to see you all again in this new chapter. Without further ado, let's dive straight into the story. At this moment, the chest of the divine tree suddenly seemed to be torn open, and a stream of blood-red spiritual energy flashed and then spread out around it. What is the divine tree doing? However, it didn't appear to be painful. It seemed that this tear directly connected the divine tree's soul to the outside world. From this tear, countless golden spheres shot out, reminiscent of a mother fish laying eggs. These golden spheres then floated in midair, carrying a familiar spiritual aura. Indeed, within them were the exotic beasts the divine tree had previously tried to save. The golden monkey smiled brightly at the sight outside, while the other beasts looked like they had just woken from a deep slumber. We could even see the elder panda among them. These golden spheres not only preserved the lives of the exotic beasts, but also healed their wounds. As soon as they were dazzled by the daylight, the old lonely panda woke up in a panic, shouting, "Dark King, death! Poor thing! The elder must have been haunted by that overwhelming power and had nightmares." But the Dark King was no more, and in front of him was his younger brother, Chi-Zi, which left him stunned. The quick-witted old panda immediately understood that Chi-Zi had been manipulated by the Dark King. The old panda lunged forward and grabbed Chi-Zi from behind, shouting in anguish, "My brother, you've been controlled by the dark. Let me help you." Chi-Zi was choked so tightly that he stuck out his tongue, feeling unlucky to have such a brother. General Kangaroo and his remaining soldiers were also bewildered. They were still alive, and the world still existed. The sky was even very clear. General Kangaroo hesitated, wondering, what the heck happened? Next to him, the other exotic beasts also didn't understand what was going on. At the moment they were swallowed, they had clearly felt helpless and could only accept death. Out at sea, the waves had stopped surging and the gunfire had ceased. Only the sound of the sea breeze and the gentle waves hitting the sides of the boat remained. Luo shouted, "Look there!" Immediately, Yul looked in that direction and saw that the moon was returning to its orbit, getting smaller. Damn it, what had happened in that instant? The red on the moon was also gradually disappearing. The desert god remained silent, thinking to himself, "The breath of darkness has vanished. Does that mean Yuziu has won?" This guy was always cunning and didn't choose the wrong side in the end. As for the divine tree, its branches and leaves shimmered with a noble golden light, and its green branches hung down leisurely, welcoming the new winds. The divine tree returned to its form, kindly looking at the exotic beasts at its feet. The entire main force of the Misty Mountain Legion was below, and luckily, none of them had perished. They all knelt at the feet of the divine tree, expressing their reverence. Xiao Ling had been freed from the space of life. She looked at her master with emotion, placed her hand on her chest, and called out her master's name. Luo, on the other hand, was excited, knowing that the mutant tree had won. He too had chosen the right side, and his prestige would rise several ranks after this. Luck is indeed a skill, isn't it? The Sea Crab King was bewildered, feeling the dark power within him vanish without a trace. Despair began to consume every cell in his body. He suddenly spoke in a human voice, exclaiming in disbelief, "The king! Has the king lost? Impossible!" The Sea Crab King had never considered this outcome. He knew that choosing the wrong side in this conflict would mean total annihilation. He couldn't accept it and cried out in panic, "The king can't lose! The king can't lose!" His shouts reverberated throughout the sea. Then, he raised his enormous claw, ready to attack the warships in front of him. But before he could do anything, the golden old man Susanoo landed a devastating punch. The chieftain, with a face as stoic as $100 bill, unleashed an overwhelming attack on his enemy. This punch was different from the previous ones, not because the young chieftain had become stronger, but because the Sea Crab King's dark buff was no longer there, cutting his combat power nearly in half. The punch of a young man in his prime was immensely powerful, shattering the Sea Crab King's stone-like armor and sending shockwaves through his entire body. The pain jolted the Sea Crab King back to a semblance of clarity. It was excruciating. Yul, seeing this, decided to support the chieftain with a barrage of spiritual bombs. Under this terrifying firepower, without the dark buff, no mutated beast could withstand it. A part of the sea in front of them was boiled to hundreds of degrees by Yule's attack. The Sea Crab King and the Octopus King curled up in the raging flames, the smell of grilled seafood once again filling the air. The Octopus King, who always had a smiling face, could no longer smile. He spoke anxiously to his comrade. "The Dark King has lost. There's no way we can fight them. We must retreat, brothers." Moreover, humans have other sea beasts supporting them. On the other side, the killer whale tribe and the five-headed serpent had allied with humanity. All were powerful mutated beasts. The Octopus King was right. If they went all in on this battle, they might achieve a short-term victory, but the losses would be so severe that it would be no different from total annihilation. The mutated sea beasts behind them could only curse in frustration as they watched their two kings being overwhelmed. Initially, when they had dark power within them, they had a relatively good chance of victory. But since the human reinforcements arrived and the dark power vanished from the world, they knew that retreating was the wisest choice. As soon as the Octopus King gave the order, the mutated sea beasts dove deep into the ocean and began their retreat. Yule, the young chieftain, and the holy son of Islam widened their eyes at the sight, sighing in relief as they realized the sea beasts were finally retreating. Peace at last, they thought. Before them lay a vast expanse of the sea, stained with blood and littered with the floating corpses of countless sea beasts. The sea beasts were powerful and numerous, but they had suffered significant losses in this battle. Human casualties were primarily in the form of billion-dollar equipment, with minimal loss of life. However, had the battle continued for just a few more minutes, thousands of lives might have been lost. The killer whale gasped for breath, having had to feign a strong and intimidating presence before the enemy, even expelling a significant amount of spiritual energy to deter any reckless advances. Now, even its breath was tinged with blood. But it didn't matter. The killer whale was relieved to have chosen the right side. The five-headed serpent looked at Jingluo the killer whale and asked, "Are you all right?" Despite the pain in its chest, the whale replied, "I'm fine. I'm strong." But there was one thing that pained Jingluo deeply, the near-total annihilation of his family. The price paid was enormous. The five-headed serpent, originally an overseer of the divine tree, was speechless at the loyalty and the sacrifice made by the killer whale's family. It hoped that Jingluo would maintain his health to vigorously mate with hundreds of mutated beasts each day, soon creating a new and powerful lineage of mutated killer whales. How is this possible, you ask? Don't forget that the divine tree possesses elixirs that aid in rapid recovery. The Ice Queen, perched on a rock, continued to stare intently at the battlefield. In her eyes, the land where the battle had just taken place now emitted a brilliant, radiant light, shimmering beautifully. It was the spiritual light of the divine tree. The divine tree closed its eyes in anticipation. Finally, the system announced, "System replacement successful." Immediately, the green interface was replaced by a black and purple one, signaling another transformation for the divine tree. It was unclear how long this process would take to complete. After defeating the Dark King, the world welcomed the dawn of a new peace. The mutated beasts of Australia returned to their land, leaving behind countless devastated cities. Humanity, previously engulfed in despair, finally saw a glimmer of hope. The battlefield scenes were broadcast live, and people everywhere celebrated the victory. Yet, sorrow lingered deep in everyone's hearts. 5 million lives had been lost, and the 14 nations of Australia were now reduced to 7. Hundreds of thousands of valuable facilities were beyond repair, posing risks of poverty, underdevelopment, and health crises. The Allied forces began a gradual withdrawal, greeted by flowers and tears upon their return home. The strong from all over who had gathered now returned to their realms, having made new friends through this battle. 5 days later, on a bright sunny day, with a gentle breeze rustling through the leaves, a lazy honey badger yawned on a branch of the divine tree. Cheesy was playing a melodious tune on his flute for the flower spirit, while the herbivorous dinosaur wandered aimlessly, searching for a beast not part of the Misty Mountain Legion to munch on but finding none. The golden ant remained silent, increasingly resembling a brooding overlord, while the golden monkey inexplicably grew tense listening to Qi Zi's music. Someone should lend him a roll of toilet paper. Xiao Ling approached the divine tree, gazing at it for a long time to see if her master was busy. Only then did she gently ask, "Master, now that the Dark King has been defeated, do we plan to stay here in Australia?" The divine tree responded that it would stay a while longer, as it rarely visited this place. In the meantime, it intended to tame the local mutated beasts, integrating them into the Misty Mountain Legion. Hearing this, Xiao Ling decided she would return ahead. There was much work to be done, not only in dealing with the remnants of dark power, but also in organizing and expanding her guild's forces. After this battle, she clearly felt how weak her guild still was. The divine tree looked at the girl before him and felt a sense of satisfaction. This girl was always immersed in her work. Then, the divine tree pulled out 2 large bottles containing the essence of life and said, "Take these 2 bottles of life essence for your people. You have done very well." Xiao Ling, puzzled, reached out to accept the 2 large bottles. Her master had never given so much before. What did this mean? Perhaps it was a sign that Xiao Ling should expand her forces tenfold. Suddenly, a massive foot stepped onto the ground right in front of Xiao Ling. If it hadn't been the foot of the divine elephant, she would have undoubtedly sliced the intruder in half. It turned out that the divine elephant and the other 2 members of the divine tribe had arrived. What could they want to negotiate about? Chapter 241 ends here. See you all tomorrow.